Hi, so after surviving the MAPPCP dissertation myself, and finding that some of the tips and tricks that I'd come up with along the way helped people I was in close correspondence with that were also on the course, I decided to make this and share it a bit further, and I hope that this will help you too. It is short, you do have supervisors, you do have all the course material, and that's what you absolutely need to follow. So these are just the small things that I found maybe they're a little bit extra or they're a little bit different than you will hear from other parties, and then you can decide yourself if it's a good idea or not to implement it on your side. So basically with the dissertation, one of the things I think is really important is just being very organized and very disciplined. For me, it was possible to complete it whilst working full time and having other responsibilities, but it did mean that I had to be quite disciplined with my time. I'm not very good at spending 8 hours on something solidly at the weekend, so for me it was like 2 hours a day. I just had to make that time happen, and it did. I mean, it is kind of like you make your choices about how you spend your day. So as long as you're confident in that, I think those things kind of unfold naturally. If you are a person that's better at 8 hours at the weekend, then of course that's how you should look at your time structure. One thing that I did from the start is I created a poster, which you won't be able to see very clearly, but I basically break out all the sections that I have to complete as part of the dissertation. They're on the poster, so I know constantly what it is that's expected of me. And alongside that, I actually put the word count and then the marks for those sections. So the word count gives me an idea of how much it is I need to get through. And then the marks, of course, gives me sort of an idea how intense and how focused I should be on those sections. And my big tip there is you will hear supervisors and staff at the university always saying focus on the sections with the big marks. And that's of course true, you should focus on those sections. But for me, the small sections with the smaller marks, there's still sometimes 10 marks there, and there may be easier wins. So when you go for each section and you're writing each section, always have the marking criteria right next to you, and basically just fulfill everything that it's asking for you. That's where you get your 10 marks for that small section. With the bigger section, the marks often come with being able to show more critical thinking, getting a bit more quite complex with your arguments, so those can be quite difficult wins. So even though a section of 400 words might only have 10 marks, they're still worth focusing on, in my opinion, because you might be able to quite easily score a 7 or 8 or higher or wherever you land, but it should be possible to sort of pick those off. Also, for me, with the dissertation, those smaller sections are actually good places to start sometimes, because they give you a kind of confidence that you've actually completed something and actually put it to the side. With the project proposal that comes before the dissertation, you might find that easier because there's a number of small sections. With the dissertation for MAPPCP, the structure is largely focused on the journal that you choose at the moment of that I'm recording this video anyway. So you might have smaller sections within the bigger sections of the structure and the marking criteria to fit your journal, and that's where you might be able to break it down. When I write the sections, I always have one Word document at the start per section. So I split them out, and there's a few reasons for that, and I think this is a really good thing to do. Firstly, your sections have word counts. So if you have them split into if you have like your intro in one document, every time you open it, you instantly can see at the bottom how many words it is that you have so far. So you're constantly aware of what you've written, how many words, and if you're going too high over your limit. With most of these types of assignments, it's quite easy to go over the limit, and it can be harder to cut afterwards if you've gone really high over. So sometimes just having that constantly there just can keep you kind of focused. The other reason I put them all in separate documents is when each section normally has a particular structure. So it's very good, I think, to write one, have a draft of one, and then let it sit for a while before you go back and start editing it again. So keeping your sections in separate documents, you can quite easily close it and then go and work on the next one. And then when you feel like it, you can go back to the one that you have completed. So that's just one way to really keep it kind of tight and structured there. When you do that and you close out one of the sections, just remember to always really give it some time before you start editing, because there's just things you see when you go back. If you're constantly trying to get it perfect within the space of a couple of days, you won't notice all the small mistakes. So always give yourself time to go back and keep doing new iterations of each part. And don't be afraid to be critical with yourself. So we were talking about word count and how that can easily come up, and you can start getting to the point where you're like, you've got like 300, 400, 500 words over what you're allowed to submit. So always be quite, when you go to edit your sections, just be quite critical of yourself and don't be afraid to be. Some people are really, I've done this as well, it can be really hard to cut a brilliant idea. So it can be, sometimes you're kind of keeping something in there that doesn't fit the marking criteria or your research question just because it is a brilliant idea. When it's hard to do that and actually edit those things out, open a new Word document and copy them in there so you don't feel like you're losing them forever. Perhaps it'll come in another study you do. Perhaps it'll later come to you that you can use that in the discussion and you hadn't thought about it. It could be it switches sections for you, but you don't have to feel like you've deleted it forever. Just kind of take it out and keep it somewhere else until you maybe evaluate a bit later. Quite often when I do that, I forget I have those spare Word documents with these sort of cut out pieces, and quite often I end up just deleting them. And sometimes I'll go back in there and then I will pull something out again. So it depends. But it can help with a sense of that you're not killing off a brilliant idea anyway. So I think that's really useful. One thing I did with my supervisor was I would actually submit to him also in these separated documents. I felt like maybe it's easier for him to mark and see my words and, maybe revert when he felt like it on different pieces. Other supervisors might be quite keen on getting the whole thing together. So that's something you would have to just find out with them. I think one thing I found very useful and kind of comes in handy with also having the sections, but also kind of splitting the dissertation up in your mind into smaller portions, is that you can actually try to fit your energy for the day or the hour that you're starting to work to what you're actually working on. So, for example, if you're writing a discussion section or a literature review section, you're combining a lot of papers and ideas, and you're really having to get quite complex and focused and in detail. And you need to have quite a bit of energy, and you have to be ready for that. So that's the kind of sections you're going to write when you're really on good form. You're not tired. You're not, running to get your kids every 5 minutes from the corner of the room or something like that. So that's just something you can consider. Doesn't mean, though, that if you are a person that's going to work 1 to 2 hours a day or whatever on your dissertation, doesn't mean that just because you don't have the energy that day that you can't still add value to what you're writing. So one thing I did was, there's small things you have to do when you're compiling the dissertation which actually contribute to your marks that are quite important. So one of those is the reference section. You have to have the right formatting. You need to make sure it's in the style of, if you're doing MAPPCP, you're writing in the format of the journal that you're going to potentially submit to afterwards. So if they've chosen APA formatting and referencing, you're going to make sure that that's throughout your paper, and in the reference section at the bottom that all your references are perfect there. And that's a brilliant job for when you don't have any energy but you still want to feel effective, because just making sure all your references are there and they're in the right style, you can do that then. Typically, I've seen that there's different ways that people do their reference section as well. Some people do it right at the end. They just painfully go through and see the papers they've used and then build this up. Personally, if I use a reference, I already copy and paste the long version into the reference section ready for the back of my paper. I don't make the formatting perfect at that point, so I'll just have one document with all my references. When I have those days when I don't have a lot of energy, I'll put them in alphabetical order. I'll make sure they're in, for example, APA. I'll make sure that the commas and the full stops are good, that the italics are right, and I'll do things like that. So again, that might not be how you've done this before, so that's up to you. But just try and think about if you're having a day where you don't have a lot of focus, but you still want to make something happen for your paper. Those are the low-hanging fruits, or the small things you can do still. Again, formatting throughout the paper. There's for APA, for example, that I use for mine, very strict formatting for all the sections and the font and everything like that. And that actually took, that takes time. And that's another good thing to do when you don't have the energy. I basically set up one template Word document with the perfect formatting, and I saved that down, and I just kept that, and that's how I tackled that one. There's just small things. So if you have a little bit, you don't have enough energy to do your discussion section, you have a bit more energy than doing the small things, so you're somewhere in the middle. The thing you can do there is pick up one of your sections and do some editing and just go through it and read and just check. One thing I learned doing this course was how to edit properly, because I think previously I was the person that scored very, very highly on exams, and somehow the coursework was not quite there. So I really focused on just deliberate practice with editing and just got my mark right up there because of that. And I can just really say it's what you need to do if you want to get the really good marks. You've got to edit over and over, and you've just got to be at times ruthless with your words, and really give yourself spaces between, keep looking at it. So don't leave your dissertation to the last minute unless you really have no choice. Try and give some good time gaps so you can go back and edit. The feedback that you'll get from your supervisor is really key, because they're part of marking it, so you always have to listen to them. So that's of course crucial, but it is still a constant process for yourself, also editing yourself and being critical of yourself. And as I said right at the beginning, consistency, a little bit constantly, you won't feel too overwhelmed. Despite that, there are periods where you will feel completely overwhelmed. It happened to me, it happens to everyone. Especially at the start of modules, I'm pretty much like overwhelmed. I don't know how I'm going to get to the end of it. I have this kind of moment. I have a couple of days where I don't feel too good about that. And then after a couple of modules, I realized that this is a kind of pattern for me. I have that period of kind of almost panic, I suppose, how I'm going to do my job and do my studies. And then it goes away. And then I figure out that somewhere around the halfway mark in the module, I can also see that I have plenty of time and everything's spaced out okay. So it's just about getting through that moment. When you have those moments, just remember that they will pass, and just kind of try and ease your way into it. Of course, it's not that simple when you get there, but it helps, I think, to know that you do get through it. And there's a lot of people that have got through this dissertation with and passed this course, and you will as well. So it's just about making sure that you have enough strategies in place to help you with that. I hope this helps. I'm going to potentially make another video, maybe a bit shorter, when I think of some other points. And you're welcome to contact me. I have considered whether I should offer some kind of group coaching to the next students on how to get through this. It would be very small charges. It wouldn't be, I don't want to do more than just sort of make something out of this that I can maybe sometimes, just see how it goes. But feel free to contact me. Okay, bye.